I'm Susan Collins, the Joan and Sanford Weill Dean at the Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy, and I'm delighted to welcome all of you here with us this afternoon on behalf of the Ford School, the School of Education, and the Center for Local, State, and Urban Policy that's known as CLOSUP around the state. I'll be very brief. Our moderator, John Austin, who's the Vice President of the Michigan State Board of Education, will introduce our speakers in a few moments and set the stage for today's discussion. John is a non-resident senior fellow at the Brookings Institution, where he directs the Great Lakes Economic Initiative. He's a very well-respected policy analyst and speaker, and we're very happy that he's able to join us here today. Before I turn things over to John, though, I would like to say just a few words of appreciation. This event is a keynote session for a larger research conference that's hosted by CLOSUP, the Ford School, and the School of Education. And I'd like to recognize the very hard work of two faculty members who've organized the conference and this afternoon's panel, Professors Brian Jacob and Susan Donarski. Both of them are education economists who care deeply about the impact of their work on public policy, and I'm very grateful to them for convening such a distinguished group of scholars and policymakers for what has already been a very lively conversation. In organizing this week's events, Brian and Sue had a great deal of help from a very talented staff at CLOSUP, and it's a pleasure for me to recognize their hard work this afternoon as well. Finally, it's always a pleasure to collaborate with our friends from the School of Education, and in that context, I'd like to thank my colleague and co-sponsor today, Dean Deborah Ball. With that, I would simply extend my very sincere welcome to all of you for joining us here this afternoon, and my thanks to our panelists, Lieutenant Governor John Cherry, Mary Sue Coleman, the President of the University of Michigan, Michael Hansen, President of the Michigan Community College Association, and Mark A. Murray, President of Meyer, Inc. And now, to get us started, I am delighted to turn things over to our moderator, John Austin. John?
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Susan, for your leadership, and CLOSUP and the School of Education for this important discussion that we're all eager and happy to participate in. As Susan noted, whether you knew it or not, you re-elected me to the State Board of Education in Michigan, if you voted in Michigan, so thank you for that last year. And Kathleen Strauss, our State Board President, is here. Kathleen, do you want to wave to the crowd who serves you on the State Board of Education? It's my pleasure, too, to welcome you to this public portion of this two-day convening higher education in Michigan, looking back and looking ahead on the 5th anniversary of the Cherry Commission. In 2004, I had the real privilege of serving as the policy director for what came to be known as the Cherry Commission. Its formal title is Lieutenant Governor's Commission on Higher Education and Economic Growth, and I see many of both the staff and research help and commission, both members and helpers here today. And I want to just give a minute of context to the commission and then introduce our distinguished group of speakers and commission members. If you go back to 2002, 2003, really the first signs that the latest sort of SUV-led auto bubble of prosperity was beginning to collapse. And Michigan was really beginning what's now been almost a 10-year downturn driven by the dramatic restructuring of our manufacturing and auto parts-based economy. Governor Granholm, who was, I think, a year plus into her first term, Lieutenant Governor, the private sector leaders in Michigan, and the public sector leaders, I think we're all realizing that, one, our Michigan factory economy that had provided for several generations very good paying jobs that needed little formal education beyond high school was unsustainable and was in relative decline. And we were seeing states and communities around the country that were the most prosperous, that had growing incomes and better, more diverse, thriving economies. And these were the states that had the best educated people and that were the most successful in converting their new ideas, their research, their innovation, and helping their talented people commercialize and create new enterprises, new jobs, and whole new industries. And so in response to these realities at that time, Governor Jennifer Granholm set an ambitious goal that we as a state, if we're going to be competitive, need to double the number of well-educated people in our state within 10 years. And we need to do very much better at leveraging our tremendous higher education assets and infrastructure, our community colleges, our great research universities, and our great system of public universities, and help them to contribute and help us all to contribute more to economic growth. She appointed the Cherry Commission literally a who's who of Michigan business, labor, education, higher education, and civic leaders. Many of the who's are here with us today and are on the panel. And you have the full bios of these distinguished leaders. To signal the importance of this commission at that moment, she asked her Lieutenant Governor, John Cherry, to personally head the commission. And as many of you know, Governor Cherry has been a long-serving public official, state legislator, state senator, elected to lieutenant governorship with Governor Granholm, and is currently an unannounced but a sort of announced candidate to replace her. So we're delighted to have Lieutenant Governor Cherry with us here today. She also asked President Mary Sue Coleman of the University of Michigan to help lead the commission. And President Coleman recently was named by Time Magazine as one of the top 10 university presidents in the country. We all know her as one of the most fierce and effective advocates for the role of great universities in economic change and innovation, and the role of this great university in transforming Michigan's economy. The commission included several of our community college presidents and leaders from the state. And Jim Jacobs, who spoke, I know, at the panel previous, said it was one of the first times that the sometimes treated second-class community college leadership were at the same table with these august university presidents and others who often play the role of higher education leaders. So we brought the community college and great university leadership together. And we're delighted that Mike Hansen, who heads the Association of Community College Presidents, is ably representing the very able and aggressive and progressive set of community colleges that we have in Michigan. And finally, we're joined by Mark Murray, who today is delivering higher standards at lower prices as presidents of Grand Rapids-based Meyer Corporation. We're asking Mark to resist his natural tendency now to turn this into a commercial for Meyer. It is the holiday season. There's lots of shopping to be done. But at that time of the commission, Mark was then delivering high-quality education with the lowest state aid, I think, at Grand Valley as president of Grand Valley University. And Mark has been a long-serving leading public official and public person in Michigan, and always provides very pragmatic political and policy advice, as he did during the commission. So each of our distinguished leaders are going to have 10 minutes to hold forth. I think we're all here today to very candidly take stock of the commission's work and its ambition for Michigan. And I know with these sorts of folks, they're going to say whatever they want anyway. But I do hope we're all going to reflect upon some central questions. What did the Cherry Commission accomplish? What did the Cherry Commission not attend to or not get done? And then where do we go from here? So with that, it's my privilege to introduce Lieutenant Governor Cherry, who will have to exit at 5 o'clock. We're delighted to have him for as long as we do, and appreciate him holding forth. So he'll slip out unnoticed at that time. But thank you, Lieutenant Governor.
Well, thank you very much, John. And I have the good fortune of having my name attached to the work of this commission, but John, obviously, as policy director for the commission, is largely responsible for much of the work, and then Chuck Wilbur, who's here in the front row, is a senior advisor for the governor, who was very instrumental in bringing this commission work to completion as well. So I want to give both of them the due recognition they deserve for the very hard work that they put in and what they were able to accomplish. But nevertheless, I'm grateful for this opportunity to reflect on the 5th anniversary of the Cherry Commission and the state of higher education here in the state of Michigan. And to that end, I think it's important that we consider the context of in which we're gathering today. At this very moment, many families of high school students across Michigan are wondering if they'll be able to afford to send their kids to college next fall. The state legislature has adopted a budget that includes massive cuts in education spending. Companies across the state are making tough decisions about their employment outlook for this coming year. And college seniors are making difficult choices about their own future and whether or not that future will be here in the state of Michigan. And so you can easily see why, more than ever, this is a critical time to discuss higher education in Michigan. Not because it's the 5th anniversary of the Cherry Commission, but because of the new challenges that we are facing today in this economy. 5 years ago, when Governor Granholm first asked me to lead the Cherry Commission on higher education, we could not have foreseen the global financial crisis that continues to unfold today. We could not have predicted the full toll it would take on our economy here in Michigan. But we then knew, as we know now, that our economy is in transition. We knew then, as we know now, that our students could no longer walk from their high school graduation procession straight into the floor of an assembly line. We knew then, as we know now, that the only way to keep our kids in Michigan and prepare them for the jobs of the 21st century is to give them a clear path to higher education. In December 2004, after months of analysis and discussion with educators, experts, and university officials, our commission laid out a set of 19 specific recommendations with the goal of doubling the number of college graduates in Michigan in 10 years. Among these recommendations were new approaches to ensure every student was prepared to take on the rigors of college and continued study and to succeed in the new economy. We recommended professional development for teachers to ensure that they could best prepare their students. We recommended new efforts to target adults who had started but never completed their college degree. We recommended integrating entrepreneurial skills and ideas into the K-12 curriculum and beyond. And we recommended new compacts for communities, improved tracking for degree completion, and increased opportunities for dual enrollment. And we also recommended a comprehensive economic initiative that would create jobs for our college graduate for decades to come. Each of these recommendations was grounded in the notion that we must realign our approach to higher education with the priorities and opportunities that exist in Michigan so that each and every student can count on finding a good-paying job at home after graduation. 5 years later, I remain equally, if not more, convinced of the urgency and the importance of each and every Cherry Commission recommendation. I'm proud to report that we've made progress on quite a few of them. We've enacted a new, rigorous curriculum for high school students that went into effect during the 2007-2008 school year. This curriculum emphasizes math and science, a knowledge base that is essential in our high-tech economy. We are excited to see the impact this rigorous curriculum has had on the 2011 graduating class. We replaced the outdated MEP with new college readiness assessments to ensure our new curriculum is working and to ensure that students are learning what they need to be successful in college. We established a major statewide initiative, the No Worker Left Behind program, which targets adults to begin and complete their degrees, links adults who have basic skills with accelerated learning programs, and fundamentally reshapes Work First. We created a 21st Century Jobs Fund that is investing in emerging industries, including advanced manufacturing, life sciences, water technology, and alternative energy industries that are the future of Michigan's economy. And on the goal of doubling the number of college graduates in Michigan, one institution, Grand Valley State University, has achieved that already. Ferris State University is halfway there, and Saginaw Valley State University is a third of the way there. And while I'm proud of these institutions and the strides we've made, there is absolutely no question that current economic challenges have derailed our progress. And just when the case for higher education could not be more emphatic, the state legislature has decided to break a promise that 96,000 families by cutting funding for Michigan Promise scholarships at a time when they need them most. I am most disheartened to see the once bright promise of higher education a dimming light before our eyes after all our hard work and after we have come so far. And I cannot help but feel a sixth sense of deja vu. 5 years ago, we created the Cherry Commission because our state's disturbing and destructive trend of disinvestment in education. And we're seeing these same trend lines again today. We cannot allow history to repeat itself, and we cannot go back to the same policies and approaches that led to economic calamity and brain drain in the first place. More than 96,000 young people have worked hard in school with the understanding that if they did their homework, earned good grades, and learned the skills they needed to succeed, we would help them further their education. Now just imagine, we're just a semester away from graduating high school. You've gotten into the school of your choice. You're excited to graduate and move on to a new phase in your life. But your father was laid off from his manufacturing job last year, and your mother's part-time salary isn't enough to get you through school. You've been working nights and weekends to save up, but with rising tuition, you can't afford to pay your way all alone. And suddenly you hear the news one night that the scholarship you had worked so hard to earn, the scholarship you need in order to attend college, is no longer being funded. Or imagine that you're a sophomore in college who will now need to take on a second or third job to make up for your scholarship that had just been eliminated in an economy where even low-income jobs are far and few between. For 96,000 students, the dream of getting a good education and a good job has turned into a financial and logistical nightmare. This is the reality we now face, and it is an unacceptable reality. We need to change it by sending a clear message that we value our young people, we value their education, and we value their future here in Michigan. It defies common sense that we would not do everything in our power to keep the promise we made to Michigan's young people. What we have to do now is not just restore our broken promise, but guarantee it for years to come. And this means looking for new, innovative, and sensible solutions. It means looking for new sources of revenue to fund our important investment in the education of our citizens. It seems to me those of us here that live in the state of Michigan, have two immensely valuable resources. Both are being depleted. Both require investment, and both will determine the future of our state. The first resource is our people. When we have, here in Michigan, the best workforce in the world, renowned colleges and universities, and young people who are eager to work hard and succeed. That resource is being depleted by our economic crisis and our failure to live up to our promise to Michigan students. The second valuable resource is this state's water. We are surrounded by majestic Great Lakes, as well as tens of thousands of inland lakes, rivers, and streams. For hundreds of years, water has defined our lives, our livelihoods, and our unique Michigan culture. Today, it is threatened by pollution and depletion. Our water resources are in need of restoration and in need of protection. Yet right now, today, water bottlers across the state remove water from our wells essentially for free, and we lack the necessary funding to safeguard this precious resource for generations to come. In other words, we are losing one resource, our talented workforce, and the energy of our young people, and we are giving away another resource, our water, for free. You don't need a PhD in mathematics to solve this terrible equation. It's time for the bottlers to pay their water bill just like you and I do. And we can use the proceeds from that water bill to fund the education for our young people that they need to compete, as well as the protection of our wetlands and our water resources that Michigan desperately needs. The numbers are straightforward. By conservative estimates, a water bill of 10 cents per bottle paid by bottling companies that operate in Michigan would raise $118 million per year, and likely more than that. The cost of the Michigan Promise Scholarship, on the other hand, is about $100 million per year. In other words, a modest charge on each bottle of water pumped from Michigan's groundwater, paid by bottling companies, would raise enough funds to pay for the entire Michigan Promise program, and we'd still have $18 million a year to spend on wetlands regulation and other conservation initiatives. This is a straightforward proposal that makes tremendous sense. What doesn't make sense is that we would not keep our promise that we made to Michigan students. What doesn't make sense is that we would simply give our water away for free. Imagine Texas or Alaska giving away its oil for free. Imagine Oregon giving away its lumber for free. It's illogical and even criminal that we are not putting our highest value possible on our invaluable water resources. It's the people's water, and the people deserve to get something in return when someone else takes it for their own profit. This is just one proposal that will enable us to keep Michigan's promise despite the difficult times we're experiencing. I'm sure that there are other ideas, and they should all be heard and debated. Nothing should be off limits in our search for a logical, practical solution. In fact, the only thing that should be off limits, the only thing we cannot afford, is naysaying. We all know that old aphorism, where there's a will, there's a way. Well, in Lansing, it sometimes feels like where there's a should, there's a won't. During an economic crisis, there will always be those people who say we can't afford to invest in education. We've been seeing that thinking for some time, and it's the same thinking that got us in the economic mess we're in today. But you and I know that there is no better time than this moment of crisis and uncertainty to give our young people the skills and training they need to succeed. There is no better time to give them the opportunity of a bright future. There is no better time to take the measures necessary to keep Michigan competitive. And there is no better time than this very moment to prove to our students, our educators, our companies, and everyone in America and around the world that when it comes to higher education, Michigan means business. We need to restore Michigan's promise, and we need to begin investing in higher education again. Thank you very much.
Well, I want to thank Lieutenant Governor Cherry for lending his name to and his leadership to the commission that developed an important roadmap for this vital link between higher education and economic growth. The Cherry Commission really was a critical impetus to remind all of us in Michigan about the importance of an educated citizenry and higher education's role as a source of the people and ideas that drive our collective future. We all agree Michigan faces an uphill battle, but no amount of hand-wringing will right the economic imbalances that we face today. As a state, we always have placed enormous importance on education and innovation, on hard work, on entrepreneurism, and on the natural resources that make Michigan a beautiful place for residents and tourists alike. The Cherry Commission laid out a specific role for higher education in the future of our state. Despite the economic crisis that developed between then and now, or perhaps because of that crisis, we have an obligation to follow through on those recommendations. Now, despite dwindling state financial support, we all know it. We have to continue to try to transform the Michigan economy, and it's going to take all of us working toward that goal to secure our future. Now, as John said, I was a member of the Cherry Commission, and I was privileged to chair the Economic Benefits Workgroup. This was really a fun exercise for me because it caused me to think in much more depth about how Michigan's universities and colleges can and must contribute to the state's economic growth beyond what we do in creating an educated workforce. These educational institutions serve as engines of job creation. They meet current labor market needs. They bring innovations and applied research to enhance the work and productivity of public and private sector organizations. They provide an educational capacity and access to higher education to improve the credentials of Michigan residents, and they serve as anchors and accelerators of community development. Now, our work group developed 6 recommendations. We wanted to create an emerging economy initiative in the state. We wanted to establish this linkage, this higher education, higher pay compact. We wanted to commercialize more research. We wanted to create a culture of entrepreneurship. We wanted to expand the role of higher education in community development. And we wanted to align higher education with economic needs and opportunities. And a lot has happened since then. I think all of us in the higher ed community have really focused attention on what we can do beyond creating an educated workforce. That's important, but we can do a lot too. We do get it. We do get what needs to happen. So what we've tried to do is to create an environment where students no longer believe that they can get a degree or a credential or whatever and simply go out and find a good job. We want to create the initiative among students that they have a role in innovation and entrepreneurship, whether they are here in Ann Arbor in starting a business in a place called Tech Arb, where we have about 30 student businesses being launched, or whether they're honing their entries for business competitions. And the interesting thing to me is that this is happening all over the state with increasing frequency. College students are being matched up with startup companies. The Michigan Initiative for Innovation and Entrepreneurship's internship program is one example. We're trying to link the interest of students while they're still in college with businesses, because one of the things we all know is that if a student has an opportunity to work in a company in Michigan, they're much more likely to accept a job there. And this particular program is the result of a collaboration among Central Michigan University, Michigan State University, Saginaw Valley University, U of M Flint, and the Mid-Michigan Innovation Center. Now, just last week, a campus organization, a student organization here at the University of Michigan called Empowered Entrepreneurship, announced the winners of its second annual 1,000 Pitches competition. The competition generated 2,165 ideas for new businesses, products, or ventures. And the winning ideas included a portable solar-powered mini generator, earplugs with a built-in alarm clock, a new kind of musician's metronome, and an inexpensive water condenser that could be used in developing countries. In the Upper Peninsula, Northern Michigan University is sponsoring a new business venture competition in which students compete for $10,000 in cash prizes. In October, more than 125 area high school students participated in a business plan workshop at Eastern Michigan University's College of Business. Faculty and business professionals helped to guide the students from 7 local school districts through the process of devising and refining a business plan. These activities are happening now all over the state in a way that they did not happen before the Cherry Commission highlighted the need for this kind of activity. I am a big champion of partnerships between universities and K-12 schools, between universities, between businesses and universities, because today's problems, particularly those in this state, demand collaboration. The University Research Corridor is a great example of what can be accomplished when we combine our resources. The goal of the partners, that is Michigan State University, Wayne State University, and the University of Michigan, is to align our resources to transform, strengthen, and diversify the state's economy. We are seeing results. Something known as FREB, and many of you have heard about it, is a powerful example of this partnership. It stands for the Facility for Rare Isotope Beams, a $500 million nuclear research facility funded by the federal government and awarded last year to Michigan State University. It's expected to generate $1 billion in economic activity and create 400 jobs that will benefit the entire state. URC spinoffs include startup firms like Detroit-based SynSound LLC, which designs quality control systems for manufacturing, Okemos-based Drafts Corporation, a biotechnology firm, and Ann Arbor-based Sakti 3 Inc., which is developing rechargeable batteries for vehicles. The URC is part of the New Economy Partnerships, a collaboration the state has launched to attract and retain jobs and investment in information, communication, and technology industries. In December 2008, Detroit Renaissance, which is now called the Business Leaders for Michigan, and the Detroit News honored the URC with their first Renaissance Award for being the one organization that best showed outstanding leadership in renovating the region's economy. Michigan's 3 large research universities also played a role in establishing regional community development efforts like Ann Arbor Spark, the Lansing Economic Area Partnership, also known as LEAP, Inc., and TechTown in Detroit, Wayne State's University, and Technology Park. But our reach extends beyond our regions to the entire state. The U of M launched the Business Engagement Center in late 2007 to facilitate connections between businesses and U of M faculty and students. It helps corporations recruit students and collaborates on joint research projects. It leverages U of M technology and expertise, and it tries to help find funding opportunities. So a lot is happening, and a lot more has to happen. Michigan does have a rich heritage of what we call the entrepreneurial spirit, and we forget that, I think, because we got so comfortable in the late part of the 20th century. There are the automotive kings that were at their heart entrepreneurs: Henry Ford, Ransom Olds, Billy Durant, and the Dodge brothers. Will Kellogg invented cornflakes and revolutionized breakfast food. Lou Upton was curious about electric washing machines and established Whirlpool. Thanks to Herbert Dow, a Midland chemist, the family name has become to symbolize innovation in technology and science. Today, we need to draw on that entrepreneurial legacy and the innovative spirit, and once again, put that at the centerpiece of how we're going to move forward in the 21st century. As someone who has served at 6 public universities in very different regions of the country, I can tell you that Michigan's 15 public universities and 28 community colleges are the envy of other states. We have immense quality, we have diversity, we have autonomy of those institutions. But as the Cherry Commission work group discovered, we have a long way to go. We have to increase the education levels and skills of the population. We have to find ways to do that with less support for higher education. We know that there is a strong correlation between educational level of the state's workforce and its economic vibrancy. In fact, the correlation is almost 1-to-1. It's the strongest correlation that anybody can find for economic activity and success in a state is the education of the population. And we lag. Michigan's share of adults with associate degrees or higher is 29% compared with 40% in the leading states. Our state's share of adults with baccalaureate or higher degree is 22% compared to 34% in leading states. There's room for improvement in each of these indicators. So the steps outlined here today, the Cherry Commission report from 5 years ago, aren't easy. They're not easy to implement these steps. Unfortunately, we're not in control of all of the factors that help us implement these steps. But we have to keep forging ahead to try to create a better future. For many of us in higher education, it's going to mean changing the way we do things. It means that we have to reallocate resources to a higher purpose, and it means searching for new sources of funding. I am all for garnering more state support, and I think we ought to be making our case as much as we possibly can, but I'm not going to sit around and wait for state support that doesn't ever come. We have to keep forging ahead. We cannot lose what we already have in this state. This is a difficult transition for us, but we are here to teach, to serve, and to probe the unknown. We're here for our students, and we're here for the state. The Cherry Commission represented a call to action. It called out the imperatives of creating a different educational and economic future, and we have to take this great legacy that we have as a state and retool it for tomorrow's educational challenges. From where I sit, there's no chance that our work is ever going to be completed. The Commission called for a renewed commitment to post-secondary education in all of its forms, and today I believe we have to recommit ourselves to the goals outlined by the Commission. Our future depends on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Community colleges are important too, so if you're leaving the room just to get a cup of coffee, that's okay. But my name is Mike Hansen, and the last time I think I was in this building, I was across the hall probably playing pool as a student here at the University of Michigan, and I grew up here, so it's great to always be back, and so we thank the university for hosting this special event. It's a privilege to be back. I worked with Lieutenant Governor Cherry when he was senator and minority leader of the Michigan Senate when I was with the Senate Fiscal Agency, so I've known the Lieutenant Governor a long time. And of course, Mark Murray, I was looking through his resume, and I think I've worked with Mark in almost all of his career paths, and since I do most of my shopping at Myers, I still feel like I'm a supporter of Mark and consider Mark a friend. So it's great to be back. I think, and it was said earlier, but I want to reiterate the fact that, I think community colleges have recently received an awful lot of attention, certainly nationally. President Obama was here in the summer and announced the American Graduation Initiative here on the campus of Macomb Community College. But really the Cherry Commission put the light on community colleges 5 years ago. And so the inclusion of community colleges on this panel, the emphasis on community colleges, we think was really started here in Michigan. We certainly think it's an important component of the sector of higher education and the role that we can play in helping move this state forward. I think the makeup of this panel is also very symbolic of maybe an intangible that came out of the Cherry Commission, and that is the importance of all of the components working together in an overall state strategy. The role of government, forging state strategy and state policy, the role of universities and the incredible research and innovation that occurs here, and the role of community college and their function in terms of workforce transfer and occupational programs, and also the private sector, who ultimately provide the goods and services of a great economy, but also rely on and are dependent on a qualified workforce in order to flourish and prosper. And I want to get back to the role of this panel in my conclusion. But let me first start by a review of some of the things that we've been able to accomplish, I think, under the Cherry Commission. And in order to start that review, I actually want to start at the end, and that is the end of the report. And I want to quote a sentence from the last page of the report, or part of a sentence that says, "While recognizing that resource limitations will affect the speed with which these recommendations will be implemented." Resource limitations. I don't think anybody could have predicted in 2004 what resource limitations really would have meant. No one, I think most of you in this room, it's no news to you that most of the economic downturns tend to be V-shaped. We would be in a recession and we'd be right back out. We are still in this long economic downturn here in the state of Michigan, and I don't think we're at the bottom of the trough yet. It's a very, very U-shaped and therefore uncharacteristic downturn in this economy. And so, given that context, it's still surprising how many things we were able to accomplish and how many things have been accomplished under the recommendations of the Cherry Commission. I want to highlight a few of those, especially as they relate to community colleges. In terms of participation, clearly one of the big objectives of the report. Colleges and universities, but primarily at community colleges, there are record enrollments in this state. Not only have enrollments increased, but certificates and awards, degrees conferred, are even up higher than enrollments. In other words, enrollments are up about 35% since 2001, but degrees conferred are up about 44% since 2001. Much of that occurring actually since 2004 after the publishing of the Cherry Commission report. So the rate at which we're conferring degrees per student is actually increasing, which I think is a very encouraging thing. The number of partnerships that continue to be developed between all sectors, K-12, higher education, is continuing to increase. The number of dual enrollment opportunities where students can take college-level coursework while attending high school. Many of our colleges are now actually considering direct credit in dual enrollment, where we bring the high school curriculum out, or the college curriculum out to the high school. Dual enrollment makes sense when there's a college nearby, but what about the rural areas where a high school student may not have access to a college program because of geographic limitations? Many of our colleges are exploring ways to bring the college curriculum to the high school to provide that dual enrollment opportunity. The growth of early colleges and middle colleges, many of these now focused on healthcare. Two of the best examples represented here in this room at Washtenaw Community College and at Mott Community College, where some of the leading early and middle college programs are taking place, where students are able to graduate after their 13th year with both a high school diploma and an associate's degree, often focused in the healthcare area. So I think those are successes. The University Center, a national model developed right here at Macomb Community College. Many of our community colleges now create university centers on their campus, actual buildings providing classroom space on the college campus so that the student can literally walk across the sidewalk often and continue their 2-year degree with a 4-year degree from many of the university partners with our community colleges. You heard this morning about the M2O, the Macomb to Oakland partnership, which is a direct and concurrent enrollment program. You can enroll as a student both at Macomb and at Oakland University, get credit simultaneously, graduate with both an associate's degree and a baccalaureate degree, often saving the student thousands of dollars by doing so. And of course, there's just increased transfer opportunities, articulation agreements at many of our colleges, much of that done because of the Transfer Wizard, an online tool that allows students to see what courses transfer and articulate, a direct recommendation and result of the Cherry Commission, a great tool and resource for Michigan students and parents. One of the other important recommendations under the report was the whole focus on entrepreneurism. We have 2/3 of our community colleges now developing coursework and entire programs in entrepreneurship. And most of the colleges have developed and incorporated entrepreneurism into the occupational programs so that you not only come out knowing how to be a welder, but you think about what's a new application for that welding? How can the skills I've learned now be transferred to new and spur new innovations and new industries? Finally, this issue of capacity. which was another recommendation of the report, to deal and try to figure out what do we do with capacity. Clearly, many of our community colleges in particular are literally bursting at the seams. If you drove 10 minutes down the road here to Washtenaw Community College, you would probably not find a parking spot right now. At Henry Ford Community College outside of Detroit, they are parking at the mall and being bussed over to the community college because of capacity issues. So capacity remains a concern at many of these institutions. What has helped relieve some of that capacity is on the whole growth in online course and online academic programming. Last semester, there were 55,000 online enrollments at community colleges. But just because it's online doesn't mean it's free. The capacity to develop and deliver online courses is also an expensive program. They are often the first ones to fill, and if we had more resources, obviously, we could develop more online programs. But the capacity at the online level is also being shrunk by the budget and finance limitations. So I think those are clearly examples of things where we have done good things because a direct result of the recommendations of the Cherry Commission. There are still challenges, I think, ahead. And I will mention two of those that I think are most important. And the first one is obvious, but I think it's important because of its implication, and that is the challenge of budget. Resource constraints are not, it's not the challenge of the budgets because you have a hard time making payroll or because you're afraid you have to cut programs. It's what it does about the fundamental mission of the institution. Because if there is at the same time an increased emphasis, and there is, on completions, on success, on degrees awarded, at the same time that you're reducing the revenue and the money available to the college, the pressure will be to be more selective, to be more focused on those students who are going to be most likely to succeed in your institution, which severely questions the open enrollment mission of the community college. And so the question will be, what impact will the budget in these tight times ultimately have on the ability to provide access to those that arguably need it most? The second major challenge I think that we'll face is this issue of relevance. Many students, especially adults that return back to our institutions, they're not so concerned about the degree or about the certificate or the piece of paper. As my friend Andy Levin says, they're interested in the job. They need that job. We have to do a better job of making relevant the education to the job at the end of the line and the relevance of the degree to the job that's out there. Those things said, I want to sort of now end where I started, and that is with this panel. And I think in some respects, it's too bad that it takes an event like this to get these four groups here at the table. In my opinion, the sectors that are involved here need to be working together in a much more strategic and collaborative way, and maybe even at the cabinet level way, where on a monthly basis, workforce, economic development, community college, universities, are all sitting down to talk about what's the strategic way that we want to position this state to help with economic development, workforce development, job creation, and talent development. I think in that way that these four groups could really have an impact in the way we move this state forward. And I think the important role that each of us play in that can't be understated. So I appreciate the opportunity to share some of these remarks and look forward to the questions. Thank you.
The challenge of going last here is to avoid repeating what a number of other people said, so I'm going to jump around a little bit, but I want to make a couple of points. First of all, in 5 years, there are specific actions which have occurred as a result of this commission and to the benefit of this state. One I'll point out that we touched on for a second is having a core high school curriculum. That was no small undertaking, and it put us at some risk that those required courses would in fact be watered down to make sure people could in fact get across the gates. Prior to that, we only had one required course, which was civics, and it wasn't necessarily a super rigorous course. I believe the state has done a very good job of putting a core curriculum in place and holding to those standards. And I think for the long-term benefit of the state, we will be very pleased with a very important change that occurred. I think what Mike covered, it may be only of interest to a student with an urgent need or to an administrator, but some of this infrastructure about ability to transfer credits and be able to move between institutions, articulation agreements, those kind of things, very powerful, very important. It takes infrastructure to get good work done, and there were some very important things done. I would echo sort of the general sentiment. We are in quite a bit of trouble in this state. This is a very, very tough economy. We will be in it for a substantial period of time. When we look at our educational attainment here, I think the nature of data collection will cause us to look at how this state compares to other states, compares to national benchmarks, compared to best in the nation. I would encourage us at all times, this is a global economy, and we should be comparing ourselves to academic achievement around the world. And I think there, the mediocrity and the failure in way too many circumstances is even more striking. And we have a great need for urgency to continue to get at this work. I've been struck and I don't mean this particularly as a comment about Michigan. I think we have a broader urgency issue. But you know, Sputnik was 57. A little more than a decade later, we were standing on the moon. The Nation at Risk report, which was probably the best single effort to bring to national prominence the question of our achievement in 1983, which is an awfully long time ago. And we have had some successes. President Coleman talked about some of our successes, and I think we do need to keep our eyes up, our heads up, and be talking about our success, talking about the enormous breadth of entrepreneurship going on in this state. She didn't even highlight, I believe it's once every 6 weeks on average since 2001, there's been a new faculty spinoff business here at the University of Michigan. There is deep, deep entrepreneurship in this state, and ultimately we are clearly in a period of reinvention, and the legacy is so deep in this state. I now reside in the Grand Rapids area, and we've had some wonderful rebuilding of our core city. The wonderful rebuilding has been the result of a generous heart and the capacity to be generous from some great entrepreneurs, people who started Amway, and the Meyer Company has been involved in that, and others. And there's no one ever would have put a government program together to target, you know, organic soap in the basement, or computer services with Peter Carmanos, or pizza with, you know, Illich and Monahan. And we really have to have an infrastructure around allowing and facilitating people to truly create out of a need and a circumstance that they see, and a market gap, or whatever the particular issue is. And that entrepreneurship, that entrepreneurial spirit, is equally relevant in our nonprofit sector, educational sector, governmental sector. This is an attitude of willingness to change, and the discipline and the hard work and the risk-taking associated with that kind of change. And that is a cultural challenge in all sectors in this state. I'll offer a final comment, which is I would like to offer a thought about being careful about the range and breadth of what we talk about when we talk about skills and education. There is a absolute need for our capacity to sustain ourselves economically. And so a job is critically important. That gives us a place in the economic life of our communities, but it is not only the money, but it's about who we are. It's about our capacities. In my time at Grand Valley State University, one of the things I would most commonly talk about at those high ceremonies, whether it was the convocation to open the year or the commencements, we'd go back to Dante and Virgil's taking the pilgrim out of purgatory, taking the pilgrim to paradise, and having done everything Virgil can do for the pilgrim, the last gift, I crown and mitre you, Lord of yourself. We're all lords of ourself. We have to, and we've got a bit of an entitlement mentality in this state. Somebody else is going to take care of me. Well, we do have to take care of each other. We have a community responsibility to each other, but we ultimately are the ones who are responsible for ourselves, and it's fully about who we are. And this educational endeavor is critically related to our capacity for economic revitalization, job creation, and income. But it's even bigger than that. It's about who we are as people. It's about what our gifts are, what our capacities are, what our ability to engage our communities. And that's why this sense of entrepreneurism is not just as powerful and as important as it is to find a new medical pump or a new thing that can spin out into a business and employ dozens of people. It's about community transformation, and it's about an entrepreneurial spirit, again, in our nonprofits, educational sector, governmental sector. The last thing won't be, I said that was going to be the last thing. I'll do one more last thing, which strikes me today as it has struck me on a number of occasions. We collect data by state. And so we've got lots of good educational information, income data by state. The state of Michigan is a political jurisdiction. It's creation of the Northwest Territory plus a battle with Ohio over the Strip in Toledo. That's how we ended up as the state of Michigan. It's not really an economy. There is a Michigan economy that we talk about because we can collect an unemployment rate for Michigan. We can collect personal income data for Michigan. This Ann Arbor region is an economy. Southeast Michigan's an economy. West Michigan's an economy. Economies are places where there are deep interrelationships of supplier bases, commuter patterns, expenditure patterns. That's how economies work. The solution around the cultural question of how do we value education more, how do we transform, it will occur in community colleges in partnership with businesses and local universities in their region. And we are all going to end up with slightly different versions. Our respect for each other should allow us to keep learning from each other, and the kind of partnerships that the University of Michigan's been so powerful at engaging, and so many other institutions have been so powerful engaging, those partnerships are of great value. But this ultimately, I believe, for the great state of Michigan to prosper and to return, and this is a Michigan focused, is primarily going to be a story about individual communities. It's going to be a story about the greater Lansing area. It's going to be a story about the Kalamazoo area. It's going to be a story about the Upper Peninsula, because those are where economies, those are where communities really are. And it's important as public policy makers, when we're doing public policy, to identify that that's where the dynamism and the action and the innovation and the meeting of need is truly going to occur, because so much of what state policy has to do is be facilitative as opposed to prescriptive. And so when it gets in underneath and puts a system in place so people can transfer more easily, that's a very facilitative step. When it says we're going to have a basic groundwork here in what a K-12 education is, I believe that's a facilitative step. But ultimately, these improvements in our progress forward, which we're certainly going to have. We're going to have all kinds of interesting, great things occurring, but it's going to be rooted in the local communities. With that, look forward to questions.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. I think you get a flavor for why the commission and the commission's discussions and work itself was such an, as President Coleman said, educational and expanding opportunity for all of us, but why so many of our great leaders, and we continue to try to implement its vision. Since Mark didn't say it, I'll say it. Those lords of self that he described usually shop at Meijer, I think, after they're newly minted. But, and President Coleman mentioned one of the ideas that really began to bubble out of the Cherry Commission was the notion of all this young talent that we educate here. Can we help them go to work here in the private sector, in the nonprofit community, in changing the world in Michigan? The odds are they might stay longer as part of our future. So the Intern in Michigan program, Brittany Affolter-Kane is running that program. If there are any students here, sign up with Brittany before you leave. I'm going to ask a few provocative questions, and we'll open it up. I know we're going to have some mics available, and we'll go until right 5:30 before we close down. One of the themes that I'm continuing to hear is there's a lot we're getting done with no money or declining money. Boy, there's some major things we can't do because we don't have the money. So let me ask a question about the second one first. As you all know, in the commission, the commission did not say we really have to fundamentally raise new revenue or restructure our budget in order to pay for the Promise Scholarship. Or, President Coleman, your Vice President, Steve Forrest, has a fantastic, graphic or disturbing one that shows, despite our excellent rhetoric about valuing higher education, our relative contribution as a state compared to other states is at the bottom of the 50 states over the last 12 years. Did we miss an opportunity to make a stronger argument for and put in some more dedicated funding streams to keep a promised scholarship or to undergird higher ed?
So I'm not sure what the question is. Did we somehow fall down and not convincing people how important it was?
Or did we miss a chance to make a specific recommendation of how we pay for the promised scholarship, which was ultimately paid for with some baling wire and tobacco settlement money, which is now at risk? Or do we need to do that now?
Okay, I'll give you my bias right away. I believe that financial aid for students in the state of Michigan needs to be need-based. And I know that it isn't necessarily popular to have it need-based, but I absolutely believe that if you're going to get the most bang for the buck, if you make it need-based, and the promised scholarships were not need-based. So that's one way to sort of look at this and say, if you're going to encourage social mobility, economic mobility, then you have to get to the people who have the hardest time accessing higher education, whether it's in a community college or whatever you're going to do. So I think the state missed an opportunity, possibly, to make that argument and then, put the resources behind that kind of financial aid. I mean, one of the things that has certainly been shown in states that have been able to stick with this aid, and I know a lot of states are having problems right now, there's been an enormous influx of first-generation college students. I mean, you can see it in California, you can see it in Georgia, you can see it in Florida. So it is a missed opportunity because ultimately, one of the ways I think that you generate acceptance and interest for access to higher education is make it available to everybody. And so I do think that's a public policy issue that could have been done better.
Mike, your budgets, community colleges, were the one thing not cut, so you can't talk. But Mark, do you have a perspective on this?
I'll speak for Mike. Community colleges are one of the best values the state has. You can probably, there's other things you would have said. I'd say money is always very tough, and part of the reason why the Cherry Commission didn't really get into money was because the battle lines were already fairly well drawn. There are issues about how we fund schools at the university level that's been a source of engagement for 20-some years that I've been involved or was involved in it. There was a proposal to have community colleges look at potentially doing bachelor's degrees or even applied baccalaureate degrees. And then the question from the universities was, well, wait a minute, they've got a fundamentally different revenue stream and, property taxes. Money is always very, very challenging. I actually don't, and I guess the last part of that about how difficult it is I think it's virtually impossible now for the next 15 months. I think we've had a pretty clear demonstration in recent years of a collective incapacity to resolve some of these very tough issues. And I mean that in the broad collective. Mm-hmm. And I don't see any reason to think that's going to get any better in the next little bit. So I think Cherry Commission, by staying to what it stuck to, helped move the needle well and got some good pieces in place, understood what was available to be done at the time, and I commend them for staying disciplined on the focus they had.
I think Mike alluded to, but part of the agenda of the commission and part of the text for this conference is how do you help people complete degrees in institutions, community college, universities? We talked about in the Cherry Commission the importance of making sure our K-12 system prepares young people well to next step without remediation. How much can institutions do, and are they doing it, and how much can they do without money? I mean, is there still a lot of room for improvement in the effectiveness and efficiency of the delivery of education within institutions that would say, wait a minute, before we pour more money in here, there's more to do to ensure quality delivery at both of those levels?
I'd be happy with the same amount of money.
Right?
I mean, if you just give us the same amount we had in 2002, I'd be really happy right now.
You know, when we got the same amount of money, I was jumping up and down, and I don't remember the last time I've been able to say, wow, we got no increase. But it was a triumph. You know, I think you hit on an issue that is related to this, and that is, you know, the overall culture of the value of education in the state. I think when most people are asked, we talked about this morning, that people are starting to recognize that, yeah, there is value in post-secondary education. The piece that they don't yet want to do is pay for it. That whole culture shift hasn't occurred yet. In other words, people are willing to say, I like a good, strong police force, and I want clean lakes and rivers, and I want a road system that works, but don't raise my taxes, because I'm getting taxed plenty. That connection, I think, is what's remaining, and that part of the culture shift has to occur yet.
Mark, you alluded to the actions at the community regional level, and I think, Mike, you also said similar focus on what communities can do. One of the recommendations in the Commission's report is every community in Michigan organizing around higher ed attainment as its economic development strategy, this community compact, which Kalamazoo, simultaneously the Commission sort of went nuts with. I think they were already on their way. But a lot of us are consumed with what does the state need to do, how much money do we need? Irrespective of what the state does, can communities do this on their own? I mean, can they basically organize around higher education success and get it done, whatever happens in Lansing? And in West Michigan, sometimes you all say, who needs government? We're just going to do it.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, a caricaturization a little bit, but yeah, I think...
Hyperbole, some might say.
I firmly believe that we can do things. There's stuff going on all day, and one of the, how you change culture, very, very challenging. We have a culture, and every time Nolan Finley writes an article about how important higher education is, he gets blistered by parents saying, well, that's all very interesting, but, get a college degree, can't get a job. There's this sort of backlash sometimes to people who even speak out about the importance of higher education. I think communities have to engage, particularly with young people, but with us as adults, the need for continuing re-education. This is why this is a capacity to learn. It is a broad set of capacities. It's capacity in communication and across culture. It is not exclusively a particular technical skill, because in fact the world's changing so darn fast. We have to have flexible and adaptive people capable of seeing and resolving issues. But I believe not only can they, but I think that's really the only place the conversation is going to happen, and the conversation will always be a little bit different, because a community may be mobilized around its K-12 system, it may be mobilized around its community college, it may be mobilized around a job-creating initiative out of a chamber or something like that. But I'd be pretty darn surprised if there is a community that doesn't have some level of that discussion going on. Lansing right now, they have the FRIB coming in, this great new scientific thing, 400 people coming in as scientists. Well, imagine there must be a couple hundred people coming along as spouses of the scientists, and those men and women, what talents they probably have and what skills, and can they be the next startup bill? I know the Lansing folks are looking a little bit at what supports they need to help those people unleash and create and engage. And I believe every community will address it, and is addressing it, and will do it a little bit differently.
Open it up. Are there folks who want to ask questions, make their own speeches, get in on the action here? Short speeches. Raise your hand and someone will come to the microphone over here in the green.
You have them over there.
Yeah.
There are people over here who are raising their hands.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't know if this will be a provocative question, but just given all the talk about innovation and entrepreneurship and market responsiveness, what role, if any, do you think that for-profit higher education institutions might play in meeting any of these goals? And if not, why not?
Is there anyone who'd like to address that? And I think that the commission, we included our for-profit as well as our public institutions in terms of our asset base. So.
Yeah, I don't think, if that's a choice that that students want to make, then that's a choice. I don't think there was any reason not to encourage students to be sure that they could evaluate the effectiveness of whatever was being offered, but didn't get good information about it. But we had no comment about for-profit or not-for-profit.
Yeah, I think as long as the information is there in terms of quality and accreditation and those kind of
Right.
credentials.
I guess the question is more, are they relevant to the strategic conversation? Or
They
is
were,
it
they
too
were part of
small?
the Cherry Commission.
They were.
And I think the attitude of many of us was 100 flowers blooming in terms of higher education, access opportunities, role-playing, and some, I don't know if Mark wants to speak to it, I recall you being among your peers one who doesn't fear but welcomes some healthy competition, public and private.
Yeah, I think that I certainly wasn't alone in that, and I do think I don't believe if we were to take it to the next 5 or 10 years, I don't think the reality of the for-profit higher education sector is going to be a substantial contributor. But my guess is it'll be a contributor, and it helps in part because it's a little competitive, and so maybe a little bit better hours and better easy access and some of the online and those kind of things. But I think given the enormous strength that we have in the community college and the public and the private university system already in place, I don't see it becoming a fundamental driver, but I think it would be a welcome part of the story.
In the green was a young woman, and then over here and here. Let me just add, Mark was also the one regional university president who wasn't arguing that his institution is a research university, which was, for some of our participants, that's kind of an inside joke in the Cherry Commission, but go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Diana Economy, and I'm a native of the Lansing area. Got my bachelor's degree here, left for 8 years, and have come back now to get my MBA. And while when I started my MBA, I hadn't been considering actually staying in Michigan, I have been very deeply considering such actually going forward. And one thing that would help me, and my peers actually, we have these conversations quite often, is the ability to really engage with some of these opportunities and some of these issues while I'm in school. Almost in a very practical, hands-on way. And really, I wouldn't even say fully an internship, but really, even if it's kind of an afternoon of, gosh, we really need people to help do X, Y, or Z, or to engage on this level. What are some opportunities that you foresee young people being able to engage in to really get us excited about wanting to stay in Michigan and moving that opportunity forward?
Well, so I'll go over to the Business Engagement Center on South University and tell them you want to come to sit down and talk to them about what they're doing, and can you volunteer? They'll welcome you with open arms.
I also think, President Coleman, your sustainability initiative, my sense is young people, and I hope older people, want to be involved in solving big problems and changing the world for the better. And to the degree this institution and our institutions are letting them get involved in that work in Michigan. There was a radio series, Careers Beyond Cars, that public radio did. They had a young woman from Kalamazoo College who basically said, I want to be working on climate change and sustainability. I don't think I can do it in Michigan. And if she thinks she can't do it, because we're not engaging her, then she's gone. And so this is part of the opportunity.
Well, yeah, but what you need, John, is you've got to have specific ways for people to get engaged. And so go to the Business Engagement Center. They'll find a way for you to get engaged. Or find out about this internship program and, put in your stuff and talk to people. You have to have touch points. That's at least one touch point. It may not be anything there, but maybe they can tell you about something else.
They're over here and then and here. And you, sir, and there was a woman. Go ahead. Yeah.
Question. Currently, the state of Michigan general fund is facing a 25% structural deficit. That, to me, is the 800-pound elephant in the room. What recommendations do you all have about resolving that issue?
Is there anyone you'd like to pin down?
I know it's a tough question.
Yeah, a couple things. 15% unemployment rate doesn't help. The structural deficit is the gap between promised spending and current revenues. It is getting worse as the economy gets worse. And so we are in a very tough spot right now. And I believe that there will be no meaningful progress forward in the current environment for the next 12 months. I think that there is a need to continue to work on structural reforms in government, and I believe that there is a need to look at restructuring the tax
Right.
system, and both of those are extraordinarily challenging set of work. And those issues have been on the table for recent years, and I think if they were going to get done, they were going to get done the last couple of years. And I wish I were more optimistic. What we could do in that is always take, one step forward before you take the next step forward. Right now, however many thousands of local units of government we have, and there are relatively straightforward barriers in place to intergovernmental cooperation which could be removed. There is no change on the table that doesn't have a constituency opposed to that change. There is not a deep enough sense of urgency to be able to break through some of those challenges in terms of the constituencies that have something to lose in the face of the change, and the groups that have so much to benefit tend not to be as well mobilized, et cetera, et cetera. These things, this has been going on for, another timing story. Ransom Olds, he got away from Lansing. He's down at plant burns down near Belle Isle, March of 1901. August of 1901, he's up making cars in Lansing. In a 5-month period, the folks went down there, got hold of the old Central States Fairgrounds, cleared it out, built a plant. Now, of course, it was a little bit simpler time. In 5 months. 5 months now, we'd still be trying to figure out what the names of the people on the task force were going to be. We got Fielding Yost sitting over here. He didn't sit around and study it for 6 years before he went out in the field. I don't believe we have, and that's why I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, because we're going to need to cinch up a little bit on how urgent this work is, and I believe ultimately that will be led more from local communities figuring out their own working arrangements, and I'm hoping the state will be able to model some of that.
Were there others of you that wanted to ask? Yes.
Hi, I'm Juliana Keeping. I'm the higher education reporter for AnnArbor.com. The state has asked Michigan colleges to double the number of college graduates, and now Obama's asking the entire nation to increase the number of college graduates by 5 million by 2020. But has Michigan given you all any indication of how you are supposed to pay for double the number of graduates with falling funding?
No.
Next question.
How about the next question?
Well, but I agree that it is fundamentally flawed. We had a little mention of Grand Valley State University, so I'll go back and thump that tub. 92% increase in graduation, and it continues to be the lowest funded school per student. There is work we can do. It is better if there is money, but to sit and wait for the money
No, that's right.
will not get us moving forward. With the resources we have, we can do better than we're currently doing. Our responsibility, I believe, in every single one of our domains is to go forward and do better with the resources we have, and I think that helps make the case for more resources down
I
the
think
road.
that's right, Mark, but I also think that what we've had to do, and we will continue to have to do, is to ask parents and students to pay a bigger share, because the money has got to come from somewhere.
Right.
There's no free lunch here. And so
That's a real
that
access
we
issue.
keep talking about it, people keep asking me, why did tuitions go up? Well, tuitions go up because our funding is going down dramatically. Let me give you some figures. In 2002, the appropriation from the state for the University of Michigan was $368 million. In 2009, the appropriation was $320. What do we do? Well, the parents make up the gap, and they've made up the gap at Grand Valley too. And that's fine, and we can continue to do that. But I also feel very frustrated for families too. This is a very difficult environment to be in, but yes, we have to keep being innovative. We have to keep finding ways to do more with less, which we do, we continue to do. But I think that, frankly, that to ask the universities in the state to double the number of college graduates with not only no increase in funding, but decreases in funding is that's a big challenge. It's a big challenge.
John may have the exact numbers. When I graduated a public university here in the state, when I went to school, I put $1 of my own money down, and the state was there with 2 or 3, depending on what school you're in, sort of on average. Now, student puts $4 down before the state puts the 5th dollar on the table in rough average justice. I mean, and it is a sea change, and it is exactly what President Coleman was talking about in terms of this access model. People of means are not being pinched in this in the same degree that others are being pinched.
We have time for one more question, probably in the back. I saw your woman in the red, maybe two more back there. Yeah.
My question is this. The unemployment rate for people living with disabilities is well over 50%. My direct question to Mr. Murray is, one of my colleagues and friends is a greeter at Myers, and she has special needs. Is indeed hiring people with special needs a core value of Myers, and how did that come about? And then my question for the university and community college folks is, given that this war has as a signature outcome traumatic brain injury or loss of a limb, what is happening on local campuses to account for that or to welcome folks into the educational opportunities? Thank you.
Let me also say, Mark, given that question's sort of outside the bounds of what we hope we might talk about, but I understand you may want to respond.
I'll
You may
take
want to talk
advantage
about
of it.
afterwards.
Yeah, yes, it is a core value of Meyer, and it turns out it is this is still a family-held company. Fred Meyer is 90 years old as of Monday, and he still comes to work every day. And it is a value. The companies have bottom lines. Companies have values, but it also helps our bottom line. When we hire people from the disabled community, we get fabulous employees, and it is good for us as a business besides being a value we have.
One last question in the back there. The woman in red, I think, was here first with her hand up.
So a number of you mentioned the new rigorous high school graduation as part of the Cherry Commission. And as a parent of a high schooler and seeing falling funding in schools, I worry about schools' ability to meet those requirements. I mean, my daughter happens to be a good student, so, but particularly for students that struggle, to provide that remediation for students to reach those standards and to be ready for college. And I wonder if you have thoughts about that.
I think it's a huge challenge. I mean, I feel as bad for the K through 12 communities, the schools, as I feel for higher education in terms of stretching every dollar, pinching every penny, making it all work. I mean, clearly, there are good things that we can do. We can collaborate more. We can find ways to be more efficient. We're constantly trying to do that. I've become very good at that because we've been doing it for the last 8 years. And so when I talk to my colleagues around the country that have been hit with this financial storm and they're all in shock, I say, well, welcome to the club. We know how to do this, and we've been doing it. But, there are limits, and I think that what we have to keep doing is, I agree that we're, through the next 12 months, not much is going to get done. All we can hope is at the end of that time is that we will have created enough momentum and enough conversation and enough concern that people will understand. And I think actually people understand a lot more than we give them credit for about the value of education. I think people are scared now. And so part of the response is fear. It isn't about any lack of value, of understanding for the value of education. I think Michigan parents understand this just as much as anybody else from around the country. So we can hope that when that period is over, that we will finally get the kind of structural reforms in the state, that we have a tax system and a governmental system that responds to the 21st century and isn't mired in the 20th century. That's what I'm hoping for. And you all probably all have ideas too.
Well, I mean, the sad reality is that the neediest are the most expensive as well. So
Yes.
the pressure always becomes, as budgets get tight, to serve those that aren't as needy. And that's the challenge. But, it's so ingrained, I think, at least in the mission of the community colleges, to serve those students that we're hopeful that those locally elected boards will continue to make that a priority. I mean, just as it's much cheaper for us to teach English than it is to teach dental hygiene, but we still continue to teach dental hygiene because it's needed. So,
And I guess in closing, in interest and full disclosure, as a father of a new freshman, my eldest just started at University of Michigan
There you
here. The financial and stock market collapse of the last 2 years definitely made this great institution and our other great institutions, which have a history of delivering incredibly high-quality education, community colleges, universities, at, relatively speaking, fantastically low cost. It certainly looked pretty good to us. And we have to figure out how to build and grow and nurture this incredible gift that was given generations ago. These institutions weren't created accidentally. They were acts of public investment and public creation, and they're one of our greatest assets. So I hope we'll all be about the business of growing them, fueling our state's economy. And I want us all to thank President Coleman and Mark Murray and Mike Hansen for spending so much time with us today and for their commitment to the state. So.